Hey guys, welcome back to the program. I'm super excited today because I got one of my good friends, Patrick Fossati, back on the program. Patrick is an absolute rock star out in Southern California. We actually worked together down in Southern Oregon before he spread his wings and went up and conquered the Southern California market. Patrick, welcome back.
Good to be back with you, Jim.
Yeah, man, you are a crusher, and you always got great ideas. And what I like about you is the way you approach your business is, I think, really relationship based, which is, I think, something you have to do if you want to have longevity and you want to build a business that continues to grow year after year, despite the market conditions. And so I know you had a great year last year. I'm excited to talk about, what it is that you're doing that you think is maybe unique and different and a little bit of a fresh approach. So first of all, introduce yourself, Patrick. Where are you? What market are you in? Just so people can refer you business. After they hear you, they're going to want to do business with you.
Sure thing. So I'm a broker associate with Remax Gold Coast Realtors in Ventura County, which is kind of in between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles. So towns like Camarillo, Thousand Oaks, Ventura, Oxnard is kind of my main territory.
Love it, love it. So you're a top agent, and you've been a top agent for years. Give us some of what what we were just talking right before. And I had to stop you because you're going to give away so many good ideas. I wanted to record it. So we were talking right before we started recording about the benefits of business to business kind of networking, relationship building, and feeding each other business. Expand on that. Tell us how that's working for you and what you're doing to really grow that.
Definitely. So, you mentioned me being relational, which I think is accurate. So I think that's always going to start, of course, with your clients, like do business with them, hopefully turn them into friends, keep in touch, and then make that your main source of business moving forward. But for me, I think like I've had a kind of a paradigm shift the last couple of years where I've realized that we're in an industry where we're always working with other professionals. So it's cool to get to know them for different reasons, but also like looking at it as a potential source of business if you kind of treat it the right way.
Yeah. So how does that look for you? You're such a natural networker, but what is it that you do? Are you trying to first lead with their need and say, "Hey, brother, how can I help you with your business? Let's talk about what you're doing." Are you sending them referrals first before you're asking for anything? How's that actually all play out for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely a big believer in that kind of look to serve first mindset. I
Mhm.
think just in life, I think not only in business, but I think in life, if you always look to serve and bless other people before you expect anything, I think that's always a good approach. But yeah, I think with the business to business stuff, I don't know if I'm like too like laid back about it, but like I'm always like, if I find a good service provider, whether it be something immediately real estate related, as in, plumbers, electricians, handymen, or certainly a professional, a wealth advisor, insurance guy, whatever it might be, I'm always going to want to, send them as much business as I can and, you know, kind of look at it almost not expecting anything. It's
Yeah.
at a certain point, I think the conversation is going to come up. And a good friend of mine who's a broker also, he always says, you can't be afraid to ask for the business when the time is right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just feel like if I find guys that take care of my clients, I just really want to take care of them. And I think what's happened is organically, it's just started to turn into business referrals from them as well.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb, I always ask this question sometimes in seminars. I'll say, well, how many referrals would you like to start to receive, right? What would be your goal in terms of receiving referrals? And of course, I'll be able to say, well, I like two or three a week. And then the reverse question of that is, well, how many are you sending? Right?
Definitely.
If you want referrals, then you have to lead with, you have to be the go-giver. You got to give leads. And I think that's something you're probably really, really good at, is you're just giving out leads without expectation, but the law of reciprocity kicks in. And people just say, "Oh, Patrick's feeding me leads. It's natural to start to feed him leads because he does a great job, right?"
Definitely, and I'm a huge advocate of that book you just mentioned, The Go Giver. I think anybody that hasn't read or listened to it should, and I think it just is such a good lesson for how to live our lives and how to conduct business as well.
Yeah, talk to me about when you doing networking, like you're going to coffee, dinner, drinks with folks to kind of get to know people at a deeper level, or is it more just business relationships? How do you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll expand on both the business and the personal side, if you will. I mean, I think for one, I mean, I remember coming in this business and being optimistic about being successful with it because I truly love people. So to start on the client side, yeah, I'm really big on building relationships with them. You
Hmm.
know, uh, I'd say it's a regular occurrence for me to go and have happy hour with a past client, go play golf with them, If I got a buddy that's into music, hey bro, let's go see a concert. And when you get those kids' birthday party invites, even if it's not, it sounds like the funnest thing to do on a Saturday, attend those. So yeah, really big on just throughout the year spending time with past clients, but also like being intentional on that. I'm a big advocate of client appreciation events. I've been doing one every summer for the last 4 years, and I love doing them. For one, it's always really cool to see people, and I'll kind of mix in some other things that I'm doing on those as well. But just a good way to keep in touch. It's a good way to automatically reach out with something intentional at least once a year.
Yeah.
It's something that doesn't have to be expensive. You can kind of co-op with maybe your lender or other people you're in business with and just make it a fun event. So there's that on the personal side. And then on the side of the other professionals, yeah, I'm definitely a big networker. And it's funny because I don't particularly love it. I think
Mhm.
it's kind of a necessary evil, but I think it's also like the way that you do it. So I'm in a group called Provisors, which is a very high level networking group that you actually have to pay a couple $1,000s just to be in it every year. But it's
Wow.
like I'm mixing with people that are very high level business people, very intentional about referrals, and also just like the camaraderie and the advice and like just kind of sharpening your skill set that comes out of our meetings is just like a lot of smart people that take their business seriously. So like I do that. And then like the lighter stuff, the local real estate networking events and things of that nature. And to kind of mesh the two together as far as the professionals and the clients, when I do that client event, I've started the last couple of years to invite my top vendors
I love
and
it.
just kind of use it as a way to obviously thank them for all their hard work. But then like I've gone a step further now and like I promote these guys. They come to the event. Like last
Yeah.
summer, I had about 6 or 7 different companies or vendors that came. So I always give my little speech
Yeah.
and towards the end, and I gave each one of those guys a shout out.
Love it. Love
And
it.
a lot of my clients already knew him, right? But
Yeah.
I gave them all a shout out, and I had one guy uh, towards the end of the day, he almost started crying. He's like, "Bro, I've never had another real. I do a lot of work for different realtors and brokers." He's like, "I've never had an agent do the things that I was like, man, I appreciate what you're doing for us. You're taking care of my clients. I mean, I have a house painter that he does pretty much all my house painting work. He tells me he loves me every time he sees me. Like I love you, bro. Like, so like really finding good people, sending them business, and then really the on the vendor side, like just forging a really authentic and deep relationship and friendship with those people.
What's interesting is, when you talk and I want to get back to your kind of your origin story of how you started in the California market, super hyper competitive market, and you started cold there, and I want to get to that. But um, when you talk to high level agents like you, I think what happens is you hear it over and over and over again, at least I do, people doing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, $100 million in business, is that they treat everybody, or they try to, as friends. And so when you hear them talking about doing business, they're like, oh yeah, I sold my buddy a house, I listed my friend's house, because you just naturally treat people as friends. I mean, that's your natural kind of default position. And I think what happens is that just seeps into your business. And so when people say, hey, I need more business, it boils down to you need more friends, bro.
Definitely.
You just need more friends. And so what happens is we need to try to develop our relationships that we have in our database into friendships. And the same thing would be true. I think you're hitting it nail on the head with your vendor relationships. A lot of times we look at vendors as almost like throwaways, like, he's a painter, insurance guy, even lenders, title people. And we don't treat them like, hey, this could be not just a good business relationship, but it could be a referral relationship, it could be a friendship, and friends refer friends, and friends do business with friends. And I think if you try to elevate all relationships to friendships, man, your business will just like skyrocket. Don't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I look back the last 3 or 4 years, I can count probably on two hands the amount of leads and closed deals I got from that network of vendors.
Hmm.
Whether it be my lender, some of my handyman, I've had other professionals, especially through that networking group that gave me different opportunities. And I think, yeah, I think doing it like that definitely turns into business as well. And it's not all about that for me. I mean, I think in our world, it's so important to have good people to help our clients out. Like I'm doing a
Yeah.
deal right now in my home, the town I live in, and my buyer bought kind of a fixer, and she's an older lady, doesn't know a lot about construction, and she's excited about the house in the neighborhood, but she's like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I said, hey, let me bring my team of guys over, my
Hmm.
roofer, my painter, my handyman, and let me have them talk to you and give you a really good price.
Yeah.
Um, and like it just takes the stress off of a lot of situations, because it's such a big part of what we do. And another topic I'll share on that is I just mentioned give her a good price. One thing I think where these friendships with these vendors are being deepened is I tell these guys, make sure you give a fair price, but also make sure it's worth your time. I don't want
Yeah.
guys to come and feel like they need to do it for bare bones where it's not worth it and they don't feel good about the job after they're done. I said, hey man, take care of yourself, your family, and again, the price has to be fair and competitive, but like
Yeah.
I don't want you to come down here and just go rock bottom because you're trying to earn my business. Like take care of yourself too. And I think guys see that and they're not used to that and they're always really appreciative of that type of style of doing things.
I think that's amazing. And it speaks to, the lowest price is not the best price, right?
Sure.
It's all about value. And you'll be able to tell your clients, listen, you're going to get the best value and you're going to get the best service. And yeah, it's not going to be the cheapest. If you want cheapest, that's a different story, but it's going to be the best. And so I've worked with hundreds of people in the market and I'm able to give you really good advice on who to use. I think that's a lot of value right there that you're bringing to the table. On your client parties, I'm curious because this is the number one thing, not the number one thing, but one of the things we always recommend to every agent is you should do a client party every year. You're doing it. Tell us about how many people do you invite? How many people show up? What does that look like? How far out in advance do you start planning it? Just run it down for us just real quick.
Definitely. So for one, my dang light ring here keeps going out, so I'm
No
just
worries.
gonna wing
We
it
can
the
see
rest
it.
of the time. But so yeah, the client event usually we've been averaging about 60 to 80 in attendance,
Okay, that's good.
and we've been inviting about 100. And again, it's like an automatic touch point of significance, I think, throughout the year. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What was the other part of that question?
And then, so you're inviting 100, about 60, 80 show up. What's the cost look like for you? Are you renting out a space? Are you co-oping with other folks to help with the cost? How's that looking?
I've done different things. I mean, my lender always helps out pretty significantly. I've done it at parks. I've done it at wineries, breweries, like different places. And yeah, I think last couple of years, my out-of-pocket expense has probably been 2 to 3 thousand.
Yeah,
But I
good.
never, that's not even I don't even think about it. It's so
Yeah,
worth it to really keep in touch with people, and
absolutely.
it's just fun to do as well, for sure.
100%. I mean, that's what a great investment that is. Now, I want to touch on something that I think a lot of newer agents or even experienced agents go through, and that is, and I talked to two or three people this week like this that move to a different market. They don't know anybody, or they know very few people, and then they come out of the gate like, "What do I do? I'm brand new in this market. How do I start?" You experience that. You are a realtor down here in Southern Oregon. Worked with our team for a while, a few years, and then you moved up and you were successful here, and then you moved up to Southern Cal, and you started fresh. Like I know you knew a few people, but you didn't know a lot. How did you, and now you're a top agent. What was the laddering up for you? I mean, what would you recommend to somebody in that same situation?
Sure, sure. So I think I definitely had a multi-pronged approach, but I think the biggest thing that I got involved with that it still is still blessing me today is I got into, because I'm saying I didn't know anybody. I literally had family within an hour, but I didn't know anybody in the town. So the thing that was the most beneficial to me was I got involved in co-ed sports, and in my case I played co-ed kickball, and it was a
Hmm.
very social league.
Uh,
So I got lucky that it was like a very social setting, and we're going and playing sports, and then we're going afterwards and going to happy hour and having drinks and stuff. But it was such a good group of people. They were all similar to my age, again, a mixture of guys and girls, and I just formed genuine relationships with them. And then probably within, I think, a year and a half or 2 years, I did my first transaction with a friend of mine, and then from there it just snowballed, man. And the last couple of years in particular, probably half my business has come either as a direct result as far as actually transacting with them or a referral from them.
Love it. It reminds me a lot. I have a buddy, Rio, who was a cop in LA, moved to Seattle, didn't know a soul. Similar story to yours. He joined a couple meetup groups in Seattle, people that were transplants to Seattle, and so started doing dinner parties and similar, very similar story. Started selling real estate very successfully that way. Now coming into 2026, you're a top agent, and you're like, okay, I'm going to come in with a game plan. What's your overall strategy? Is it sphere based? Obviously, a lot of it is. What are the things you're doing that's you think gonna really do well for you this year? What's your game plan coming in?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm at the 10-year mark now in my market in Ventura County. So within the last couple of years, it was the first time where I really felt confident that just my sphere and my social connections were enough to kind of sustain my business at that level. But I'm still involved in a couple online lead services, which I feel like at least my experience over the last couple of years has been the quality and the connection of those is waning, is decreasing as far as, converting that into a client. And that's just me. And I'm not the best at follow up, and I don't like sitting there hounding people.
Yeah,
But I still do that because, I think I'm doing a transaction right now that was from an online lead, and it's still something that I think is worth doing.
sure.
Um, Certainly the networking and all aspects, being in groups, networking with other professionals and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm definitely shifting over into probably 80% sphere based and just kind of doubling down on that with, reaching out more events, just more things I'm doing to be involved with them, and kind of feeling like I'm at a place now where that's essentially hopefully all that I'll need moving forward.
So for you, is that something that you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I have a game plan. Maybe you're calling five people a day and you're sending a couple of note cards, or is it just more organic? Hey, I'm gonna pick up my phone, scroll through it, and pick up a couple people to call today. How's it working for you?
It's all organic. I mean, my
Organic.
whole my whole style of doing business is so it's kind of unorthodox in a sense. I mean, don't get me wrong. I show up every day. I have a game plan every day. I do a yellow pad of paper. I know you're a proponent of that. That's your style. But
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I wake up with a game plan of just like what needs to be done transactionally and different business things. But I don't time block. Sad to say, I don't prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, my prospecting is really being intentional about strengthening all these relationships and friendships. But I definitely don't wake up and say like, oh, my CRM says I need to call five people for my sphere. Now, I do a lot of things that are more passive.
Hmm.
Like I have one of the Reminder Media magazine subscriptions that goes out to like 100 of my past clients. I
Yep.
do my CRM gives them weekly updates on their neighborhood, what's selling, what's pending.
Yep.
I'm definitely a big social media guy. So they're seeing that, I feel like that's in a way kind of a form of
Yeah.
marketing, of people just
100%.
seeing what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Are you doing an
And then
email newsletter or no?
the yeah, I do a week or a monthly events newsletter that I send out to my sphere. I send out all my new listings. I have a CRM. I use Lofty myself. There's obviously a bunch out there, but I have a way to, I get a new listing and I have a template I use that sends out a flyer, and it sends out a link to the website, and it just basically says, here's my new listing. If you know anybody looking for something like that, let me know. And then it always says at the bottom, by the way, if anybody that's curious how much their house is worth, hit me up. And so there's a lot of different touch points,
Yeah. You're
but
touching
nothing that
people
I
a
would
lot.
say is too structured. Yeah.
I mean, it is structured and not structured. I mean, you're hitting a lot of like automatic stuff. So they're getting market updates on their neighborhood. They're getting an email newsletter from you. They're getting listing updates every time they can do listings, and they're seeing you on social media. So you're actually touching them a lot. We always use the 20-50 rule, 20 to 50 touches a year. You're probably easily hitting that. And then you're inviting them to client parties and you're networking. So you're doing a lot of things. What's interesting about top producers, I'm going to guess something. I bet you have a pretty good memory. And I would say that most people that are top producing agents almost universally have a pretty darn good memory. And the reason I say, is that true? Do you have a pretty good memory?
I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think what happens is you guys are able to remember, I should call it's intuitive. And it's just kind of like you just have this natural ability to say, I should call this person, I should text this person. And you're doing it almost like your own version, even though you have Lofty, you're using that as kind of like your own onboard CRM, right? From the rest of the human race who does not have a good memory, like me, for instance, I need to use a system that tells me who I should call. But for people that are top of their game, you mentioned before the call started, Deanna and Diane. And so Deanna Sickler, Diane Lane, who work in my market, who are absolute rock stars, $50 million a year producers. Very similar. Organic is that kind of how they run their business. You talk about a guy like Doug Moore's organic. You guys are very, very similar in the way you run your business. I just think it's always fascinating when you look at top producing agents.
Yeah. And I think even like easy little things, like a lot of times I'll show a house in a certain neighborhood that a client lives in. and I'll use that as a kind of a touch point. Like, hey, I was in your neighborhood the other day showing a place. I was
Yeah.
thinking about you. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
And obviously that can
Love it.
spark different conversations from there. But I do that quite a bit, and it's a little bit unorganized, but it's definitely very concise and something I'm consistent with.
I have a question in terms of growth of your database over time. Obviously, we all have an intention to grow your lofty database, to grow the number of people you know. Is that intentional for you, or is it just, hey, I met a person at a party, I'm out into my phone, and maybe they'll go on lofty later? Is that how it's happening for you?
It's usually people that I either do a transaction with or leads. But yeah, I do. And now I'm starting to kind of market to the different service providers as well. Just kind of get them into the CRM, maybe send them my events newsletter or something that's fun and light, that's not real estate related, but is
Yeah.
certainly a way for them to see me and see what I'm doing and hopefully be top of mind. But yeah, if I'm big on, like, once I get people in there, let me apply the proper tags so they get these certain newsletters and campaigns and make sure I'm always doing that consistently.
Let's talk technology for a second. Do you have an assistant, first of all?
I did for a couple years. She left last year to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, so I am back on the hunt for one.
Okay, you're in the
I'm my
hiring
own
mode.
assistant. I'm that guy. I'm my own assistant, so I need to get that changed ASAP.
Dialed back in. That's okay. And then in terms of tech, is there any like new tech that you're using that you'd recommend to agents? I know you're using Lofty. Is there anything else out there that you say, hey, this is pretty cool. I like this system. Or is it something you use consistently? Canva, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of everything. Certainly big on Canva. I do use the CRM, and that mine's pretty expensive, but I feel like the value is there. I literally had a client 2 days ago. I sold this guy his house, one of his investment properties in 2017. Hadn't thought much about him or talked to him since then, but he's on my different campaigns and he hit me up like, hey, we're thinking of selling our primary now. So, but yeah, I think the CRM, using it and using it with intention. Beyond that, like, I'm nothing too groundbreaking. I'm starting to kind of scratch the surface of AI just to generate different things, but I'm not using it probably at the level that a lot of realtors are.
Yeah. Talk to me about social media because you're big on social media. I see your stuff all the time. So what does that look like for you? I mean, are you posting every day? Are you posting multiple times a day? What platforms are you using? That kind of thing.
I'm mostly Instagram, certainly Facebook as well, but um, I don't know if I do it the amount that I should.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of room for improvement. I need to do more videos. Like, every time I do videos, I get a really good response from people. But just, a lot of basic stuff as far as posting my transactions, but doing it in a way that just feels authentic. That doesn't. It's not about me. It's not like, oh, I just sold. It's like, let me tell a short backstory about how I met the clients, or let me, kind of say something about the transaction that kind of broadcast my skill set and how I'm able to do things that I think really resonates with people. And I think just having stuff to post. I want things to look good. I usually will post when I get an offer accepted or it's gone pending. Obviously, closed sales, new listings, and then I also want to, of course, always mix in some personal things. So as much
Mhm.
as I always forget to take photos on vacation or when I'm doing things, I'm trying to get better at that because I think people do want to see a mixture of personal and business stuff.
I think that there's that statement that, the five personas, which is, real estate's the most boring thing about us. There's so many other things about us that people want to learn, what are we into? What's our hobbies? What do we do outside of real estate? And the more we can speak to that, the more well-rounded we become and the more connections we can have with people, which I think is smart. With with the way you provide service, because I know you provide a wow high level service that's referral worthy, which I think is something that we should talk about a little bit. Because I think what happens is when you give amazing service, you naturally then start getting referrals from your past clients. Talk to us about that. How do you approach working with a buyer, for instance, or working with a seller that you think is maybe unique, or just how do you approach that?
So I did a video a couple weeks ago. I always do like a recap video of my year,
Yeah,
and I did one a couple weeks ago. And something I said in there, I think, is kind of probably best describes like my mindset about things. And I talked about how, like, in a nutshell, I was talking about how, like, as we get further in our business and it starts to grow, it kind of becomes easier in a sense. So there might be a tendency for certain agents to feel like they don't have to do as much. And, like,
yeah.
my mindset, 15 years in the game, pretty well established, having some really good years the last couple of years. I'm like, I need to do more, and I
Mhm.
think, I think for one, it's funny. I actually was gonna buy another investment property a few months ago in another state where I own some, and I worked with the realtor, of course, And going through a transaction, I think it's valuable for us as realtors and brokers to go through transactions ourselves from time to time
Yeah.
to remind ourselves like how stressful it is, and also like where we can make improvement maybe from the agent we worked with and stuff. But
Yeah.
like I said, it's always like, let me do more, let me make it easier on you, and always just like wanting to over deliver,
Hmm.
and just make, I'm just big on logistics now too. So like, as they make that transition, making sure, hey, you got a moving company, hey, here's an email template, change all your utilities over in one fell swoop, change your address, little things to think about. So that's certainly a big part of it. I think having an attitude of like, what can I do? Like truly,
Yeah.
like, what can I take off your plate the next week as we're going through this transaction that can make things easier on you? That's definitely a big part of it. And I don't know. I think just always showing appreciation, and just showing like an attitude of wanting to serve is big, and also just doing it with a personality, man. Just kind of a human touch and everything is a big part of it too.
I love it. I was listening to Tony Robbins yesterday, who is a great leader, of course, but he had some statement there that just really resonated with me, which is that, and I applied it to real estate, is that we should ask ourselves with all of our clients, how are we adding value to what we're delivering to them? And if we just wake up and we say, I got this list of 5 buyers I'm working with or 5 sellers, and just saying, how can I add value to this client today? And if we just do that consistently, that's how we're going to just rock their world and to just create this referral based kind of business model, which I think is smart. I want to talk about because you're wearing one of your world famous hats today,
Mhm.
and so I got one of these hats too, and I wore it proudly. But you are great on branding, and so you've got your own swag, which I know you give to clients. Talk to us a little bit about that and how successful that's been for you.
Yeah, it's something that I think really started to flourish when I brought my assistant on, that I was able to kind of have her develop some of these things that just do take a lot of bandwidth. But yeah, I came up with a logo 7, 8 years ago that kind of just sat there and was on some marketing pieces. But then once she came on board, and not that you have to have an assistant to do it, it just was
Right.
how it happened for me. But just start to put it on things, and put it on hats that I wear on a pretty regular basis and you give to clients. I have beer koozies. I mean, I have signs, and all my marketing has it all over it. And I always tell people it's funny because I think having your own logo would imply that you're all about yourself, but I feel like I'm not really like the type that likes to get attention. But
Yeah.
for me, it's just fun. Like
Hmm.
I came from an upbringing of, very humble beginnings, and I never saw myself like being a professional one day, and didn't know what I was going to do. So like everything that I'm doing now and the success that I've been able to find the last couple years and just having this career, man, I'm just thankful every day. And it's just fun. It's fun to me to do the branding and things. And I just kind of operate from a place of like just being grateful to be in this business, and how much it's blessed my life and how much I get to impact people. And I think that's kind of an extension of that.
And I think you're doing something with your branding, which is your name basically stylized Fossati. It's a stylized version of your name, which is brilliant. That I see a lot of top branding experts recommending, including our own Tiffany Wilkerson, who I know you know Tiffany, and she talks about this a lot. Where you got to avoid brand confusion. Where if you're working for a brand, you're working for Remax, just as an example, and you've got your logo. If your logo is your name, there's no brand confusion. Where I see some agents, they'll get a little bit sidetracked as they'll try to create some funky logo that competes with the logo of their brand. And then there's brand confusion. Like, what am I supposed to pay attention to? You clean that up because you're using your name as your brand, which is what you want people to remember anyway. So I think it was absolutely brilliant. I think it's super smart giving that swag out and being able to market yourself all the time. I love it. What would you recommend to somebody that's maybe entering the business at 26 and you say, hey, this is, if I had to do it all over again, I've been in the business, 10, 15 years now. What would I recommend you do that maybe I made some mistakes that you shouldn't make? What would you recommend people do?
Sure. So I do coach and mentor different agents from time to time. I tell them to start with like the boring stuff, like I'm big on get your computer organized, have your master folder that has everything in there. Um, get all your, I'm sure this gets talked about a lot, get all your systems and processes dialed in from the beginning, where like when it comes time to write an offer, like you have it so pre-filled out and everything's templated. And obviously you need to get access to the stuff from whoever is coaching you, but like get all that stuff set up, because once you start getting busy, those things kind of get put on the back burner. And it literally took me my 10th year when I started to really be intentional about this stuff. So I'm like, get all that stuff the busy work done in the beginning where like you kind of just run your business like a well-oiled machine. So I would certainly start there as like a first step. And then I think learning the contracts is huge. But then just go out and just start being social with people, do a ton of open houses, get the social media rolling. I think the first place to start as far as potential clients is connecting with your sphere. And the majority of people, if they're starting in the town they grew up in, there's probably going to be at least a few people that if they approach them the right way, there's going to be business right out the gate. So I think certainly diving into your own sphere of influence and circle of friends in the beginning is huge, and just be involved.
Yeah.
I think I was kind of lucky because I started as a part-time agent. I was a poker dealer back when I started and was able to do both. I had a kind of a light schedule, but I think unfortunately this business, it, it's best for people that go all in on it.
Hmm.
And again, there's multiple ways to do it, and that's the beauty of it as well. But I think if you're going to get into it, be involved. Go to your weekly office meetings, go to networking events, go to caravans, like get out and get to know people, and
Hmm.
putting in that energy. I mean, I came up with this theory a couple years ago, kind of within line to my free flowing style. But I talked about how like I don't prospect, I'm not great at follow up, I don't time block, I don't do a lot of things that I should be doing. But like I said, the last 5 or 6 years, my business keeps growing and thankfully keeps blowing up. And I'm like, what am I doing right? And I said, I came up with this idea that I'm doing all these things that are positive. I'm trying to serve others. I'm answering questions. I'm doing open houses. I'm showing up for people. And it starts to develop like this ball of energy where like all this amount of me that I'm pouring into other people and pouring into activities, it just starts to grow. And then good things start kind of manifesting from that in a sense.
I think it's all great advice. I think if people know you like I know you, people assume that top producers are these big gregarious people that are kind of the life of the party that come into a room and are just like blow it up kind of people. And that's not who you are at all. You're very, I wouldn't say mild mannered, but you come in and you're sometimes quiet in a room and you're talking to individual people, but you're not that guy that's coming in and blowing up the room with your personality. I think that's a good lesson because I think there's a lot of people that are very similar to you that maybe I wouldn't describe you as shy, but you're definitely not that guy that's coming in that you say, oh, there's going to be a top producing agent, but you are a top producing agent. And I think that's really interesting that you don't have to be this quote unquote super salesperson to have super performance. Would you agree with that? That it just comes down to individual relationships, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, get back to the social stuff and building that sphere within a group of people. I think my style is like, be involved and make friends, but don't like, don't show up to your softball game with, your name tag from your brokerage. Like those conversations are going to come up. And I
Yeah.
think just like throwing it out there, I don't think that really attracts people. I'm big on the law of attraction. And I sometimes feel like being a little bit more low key and down to earth, I think attracts people in a certain way. And that's just how kind of my personality is.
Yeah, and I think your gift is you're able to get really close to people just by being a normal human being and just having great conversations. And I think people just open up to you naturally because you're a really great conversationalist. And I think that's a skill that everybody should develop is being really good at asking questions, really good at, trying to develop those relationships, really, which I think really matters.
Yeah, just
So,
Dale Carnegie stuff. I remember before I got into the business, or right when I did, I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's like, if you were just curious about others and you ask them about themselves and you actually care what they have to say, that's what attracts people to you. Just be a good person. And kind of on the topic of you mentioning like my personality and stuff, even as a professional, like I walk into my office meetings now and there's no self-confidence issues because I've been, top agent in my office 2 out of 4 years and top 25 in my massive brokerage, blah, blah, blah. But like I come into these rooms and I'm so nice. I think always being kind to people, not
mhm.
letting any success get to your head, making time for newer people. That's also something that's very important to me.
Yeah, and you have got a good buddy who's also been interviewed on the program, Alex Aronson, he's also a crusher, and you guys share, I think something that you both did early in your career, which I think I would recommend to everybody, is when you came in, you demonstrated your work ethic and your work ethic being super. If you give me a lead, I'm going to run that lead down. I'm going to continue working it because I'm hungry, right? And so you guys both did the same thing. And what happened is I watched it happen with both you guys. Is that the top agents in the offices watch and they like, who can I give a lead to if I'm overwhelmed? And they're like, well, I'm going to give it to, Patrick because I know he's going to work the thing. I'm going to give it to Alex because I know he's going to work the thing. And that's something, it's a really underestimated part of this business is being the person that's known to be a hard worker, so you attract those referrals from other top agents in your own office, which can be really help a lot when you're starting out as a new agent. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 1,000%, man. I think, for one, I mean, I always advocate if you're a new agent, and there's certainly so many different models now of brokerages, but I think getting into an office that has a lot of agents that are doing a lot of business is a
Yeah,
huge, huge leg up, because now you're in a place, like you said, with other people that are doing business that may bring an opportunity to you, certainly open house opportunities. But yeah, we as realtors, we like to see people that show up. And I don't
hmm
know, I'm just a believer that in life, you get out of things what you put in. And I think like in our business, having the mindset of like, if I want things to happen, I got to go out and get it. I think that's unfortunately something that seems to be kind of waning in society, that people think things are just going to come their way, and it's just not the case. And I think work ethic is still one of the most important things that you need to be successful in life and in business for sure.
100%. And you mentioned, I just want to hit it again. You mentioned the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I just recommended that to one of my sons last week. It's funny you brought it up. Fantastic book, one of the best books I've ever written on sales, and
Timeless,
just life in general.
timeless for sure.
Yeah, timeless. So, Patrick, people are going to hear this and they're going to want to say, hey, I want to refer a business to you. How could they get a hold of you in an easy way? Find you on social? What would be the easiest way to do it?
Yeah, I think the Instagram's probably the easiest way. It's I know you're gonna probably put my info, but Fossati Real Estate G, just like the hat.
Got
But yeah,
it.
that's probably the best way. And it doesn't have to be a referral, man. Like I truly like, if people are like, hey, I dug what you said on the podcast, I just want to talk to you and mastermind or get some advice because I'm struggling, man. I love to connect with new agents and bring value any way that I can, truly.
I love it, man. What a go-giver. I love that. Patrick, as always, thank you for all your insights, your knowledge, and sharing everything you had to share with us today, buddy. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Jim.